Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Awesome Wholesaler Experience podcast, where we look into the many facets of the job, the career, and the lifestyle of investment and insurance product wholesaling. I am your host, the creator of the Awesome Wholesaler Experience, and yours truly, Awesome Mike. Hey, everyone, we have our one of our favorite guests actually has agreed to come on the show again. Can't believe I tricked her into that one. But it's none other than Dr. Maribeth Kuzmeski. Now, you guys might remember, but I'll remind you, Maribeth is the president of the elite consulting firm called RedZone Marketing. RedZone Marketing. Now, Maribeth and her firm personally consult with some of the nation's top professionals in the financial services industry, and usually they manage between $300 million to sometimes over $1 billion in client assets. And ironically, Maribeth got her start in the business as the fifth client in her firm happened to be a financial advisor. And this advisor only had about $10 million under management, and with Maribeth's help, grew it to over $200 million through less than 5 years using Maribeth and RedZone Marketing's niche-based marketing strategies. Maribeth's also, in her spare time, I should say, she's written 7 best-selling books, 7, including The Clients Went Wild, $85 million tips for financial advisors, and my favorite, The Connectors. Maribeth is also an international keynote speaker. That's how I met her. And she's been rated as a top 25 C-suite speaker by Meetings and Conventions magazine. She has spoken at the $1 Million Roundtable, and she's a regular presenter at Barron's top producer conferences. Now, Maribeth, she also teaches an integrated marketing course at Oklahoma State and Columbia University, and she brings an evidence-based approach to her audiences, enabling them to learn from what has been researched, what is working elsewhere, and what can be applied to their own lives. Maribeth's also a frequent media contributor, appearing on Fox News, USA Today, The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Forbes, and she also hosts her own popular podcast featuring inspiring businesswomen. Maribeth has her own charitable foundation that works in supporting women in business. That's called the RedZone Leadership Foundation. And we'll wrap up with this. Maribeth has a bachelor's degree from the Newhouse School of Public Communications at Syracuse. She also has an MBA from the George Washington University and even a PhD in business administration from Oklahoma State University. Maribeth and her husband live in Chicago, Illinois area, Chicagoland, I believe. And they have 2 children that I hear are threatening to be adults. Maribeth, welcome back to the show. Quite a resume. Let me catch my breath while you say hello to everyone.
Well, hello, and you didn't have to read the whole thing. I mean, it's pretty boring, but thank you. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome, and thanks for coming on. And credentials are important, but I've heard 2 sides of the conversation. I've heard that credentials don't matter, and then I've heard that they actually do matter. What is your take on that? What is the value of a credential?
Well, I think credentials can matter. I think it depends on how the person who is your prospect or person of interest believes that it does matter. I have a wholesaler who's working on his CFA, and I said, do you think a CFA is going to help you as a wholesaler? And he said, absolutely, I think it's going to bring me more business. Now, you can look at that in a couple different ways. Like maybe it will bring him more business, but it's a designation in the industry that's a difficult designation to get. And so maybe it does raise him up. I don't know that alone gets new business, but I also think we can't lead with our credentials. We have to lead with what's unique, different, memorable, and then our credibility is backed up sometimes by those credentials. But I don't think that we lead with the credentials.
That's wise, actually. And I think that some people kind of use it as a tool where it's appropriate. So if they don't have the quote expertise or the content there, that they can kind of get a little bit of the benefit of the doubt with their credential and get a door opened. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's exactly right. Sometimes, what does this person know? Or this person's young, but they have some credentials to back them up. And then it just sort of raises that credibility a little bit, and sometimes a lot. But again, I don't think we lead with it, but I think we can back ourselves up with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. Now, it says that you're teaching at Oklahoma State and Columbia. That's quite a diverse audience, quite a different set of students that you're dealing with. Tell us about that. What is the next generation of astute college graduates that are interested in marketing? What do they look like? What are they doing? How are they going to handle the baton as we pass it to them?
Yeah, I mean, the reason that I love teaching and that I do teach, I'm kind of busy doing the other stuff that I'm doing, but I love the teaching because it allows the next generation of marketing people to really become good marketing people, to understand marketing. And I don't think that we just learn marketing by happenstance. I think if we really want to know marketing and be leaders in marketing, that you have to really understand it. And so there's the theory and then there's the practice. And in marketing, the practice is so much more important than the theory. So but we have to have both, really, if we're really teaching somebody something. And so the way that I teach both at Columbia in the summer and then during the school year at Oklahoma State is the theory comes in the form of very short videos that the students get before they get to class. They watch the videos, take a quiz, come to class, they've got their theory. They don't have to sit in some big, long, boring lecture class, memorize material, and then regurgitate it. That's not marketing. So we take the things that they learned in their videos, and then in class, we have live cases of real companies that need marketing help, and we separate them into small marketing consulting groups, and they actually solve the case for that particular company. So for instance, one of our cases is Auntie Anne's. So Auntie Anne's comes to class and we present, the students present their marketing consulting case results to actual executives at Auntie Anne's. So it's real, it's real learning. It's not book learning. I don't think book learning helps in marketing. It's foundation, but it doesn't really help. And so we have them do it because I'd love to have lots of great marketing people out in the world who love to promote because it's the right thing to do and to be able to help businesses grow. Small businesses go out of business. Most of them are out of business in 5 years. If they had better marketing, they'd still be in business. And so I'd love just to see better marketing going on. And marketing is changing so fast that we need good people that are going to be able to understand what the key things are in marketing. Just because you understand social media doesn't mean that you can use it as a marketing tool. And we found that with a lot of students. They're good at making videos and posting them on Snapchat. Doesn't mean that they're really great at helping somebody's business market.
Good grief, Maribeth. That was amazing. That was awesome. And I don't use that word too frequently.
Wait, I thought you were the amazing one or the awesome one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, in some audiences, but let me just kind of recap and summarize a little bit of what I heard you say there, which was wonderful. By the way, college education is getting a lot of dirt thrown on it lately.
Yeah. As it should, I believe, as it should. It's not being taught right.
Well, I would offer that what you just said you're doing, that is valuable. I would have no problem paying for that kind of an experience as opposed to the prior, something that, like you said, you sit there and you read theory and you regurgitate it.
You listen to a really boring professor who talks for 3 hours, and then you're supposed to take notes, study those notes, and take a test. That's not real life. You're not learning any critical thinking. You're not learning the things that are really going to help you when you get out in the world. And one of the things that business people complain about is, hey, I just hired a young person. He or she can't make decisions. Like, they're not, what did you teach them in college? We taught them to regurgitate and to follow the rubric and do exactly what we told them to do. That's not good for the real world. That's good for passing an SAT, getting a good score in an SAT or passing a test, but it's not really good for the real world.
Yeah, and I think that's also contributing to the lack of luster on some of these designations. Because to get a designation, you didn't have to do a case study on Aunt Annie's. You had to pass a test, which was regurgitated information.
Right.
So I applaud what you're doing there. And I'm actually, literally, I'm stunned a bit because that's wonderful to hear that. So congratulations on doing that. One of my questions was going to be, they say that those that can't do, teach, right?
Right.
Not in your situation. I mean, Dr. K, you are actually doing. I mean, if you go to your website or if I read any of your books or watch any of your videos, which I do, I can really understand and see that you're actually doing these things. And I'm assuming that you're also teaching, based on what you just said, especially the things that you're actually seeing work in the real life, in the world, in the field.
Yeah, most professors are focused on their research and their academic pursuits of research. I'm a professor of practice, so I'm supposed to be actually active in the work world and then bringing that practice information into the classroom, which is what I love about it. So I'm almost like an executive in residence or something, and it's a really cool thing to do. And I consider it kind of, a way of giving back, but helping that next generation. And there's nothing better to me than if somebody takes my class and decides that they're going to become a marketing major. I'm like, yes. So that's one of my goals. But yeah, but it's all the information that's actually working in the real world. If you want to create a brand, if you want to create a personal brand, if you want to have you or your business, or just yourself stand out in the work world, you've got to understand these concepts of marketing. I think that everybody needs it, no matter if you're a salesperson, a wholesaler, some kind of a financial guru. You still need to know how to market yourself and market your ideas, whether it's a one-to-one or one-to-many.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome stuff. So as a wholesaler, or even as a manager of wholesalers or a distribution team, maybe even a financial advisor, how can they best tap in to what I'm going to call this new school training that you're delivering, and I'm hopeful that your peers are delivering at the universities? What's the best way to kind of cultivate, or even pluck some of that great available new fruit and put it into their business?
Yeah, I think it's kind of the way that training happens today in the work world. So training in the work world is very different than how we teach our students. And I think training in the work world is, role playing and doing real world things that allow you to practice the things that you're doing in real life. There's not a lot of foundational theory in the work world. It's all, hey, go and do it. Let's practice it. Let's go and do it. What's your script? What are you going to say? How are you going to do this? So I think that that's done, but I also think a lot of the why is not done in the work world. So why do I have to do it like this? Why is that going to make it better? And I think mixing a little bit of the evidence-based stuff to it, and telling, especially millennials, if you're hiring a millennial, tell them why we want you to do this, why this is going to be a game changer, why this is going to make a big difference. It's not do it because I told you to do it. But I do think that training, especially in the financial world, is based on a lot of the stuff that I teach students. It's real world application of this stuff. And what do we do right? What do we do wrong? Debrief, and let's get better at it.
Maribeth, are there any new marketing ideas? I mean, you can go back to, the legends, the pillars, Ogilvy, and these guys that kind of founded our call it modern marketing. And you would know more than I would about those great pillar names and such. But is there anything that's new, especially because of the implementation of social media now?
Yeah, I think that there's not, the tactics or the mediums that we use are different, but the tactics, the how we're doing it is really the same. So the mediums are different. We've got social media. We didn't have social media. My first book was written in the early 2000s. There wasn't social media like there is today. I had to just trash the book is worthless, because if you don't talk about social media, it's like she doesn't know what she's talking about, because that's how much things have changed. But the base concepts of finding ways to stand out amongst your competition, and messaging yourself properly, and having a great value proposition, and being able to do those things. Yeah, we do more video today. Yeah, we do more social media, but the concepts are the same. We've got to find ways to be unique, to stand out, and to attract sort of a viral audience, whether that's a word of mouth audience or something else. But we want people to talk about us, and we've always wanted people to talk about us.
So the old becomes new yet again. I did a lot of research, and I follow your stuff anyways. But there are a few concepts that you come up with, and if you allow me to, you said that most networking and a lot of our activity as financial advisors and wholesalers is really under the umbrella of networking. It's meeting and greeting and building relationships. But you said most of it's not successful. Very few find it successful. And then you mentioned that networking is not about finding hot prospects. It's about cultivating advocates. Can you kind of explain that a little bit more in detail?
Yeah, I think if we go into a networking event thinking that we're going to get someone to do business with us right away, it's just you're barking up the wrong tree. And that's why it's so frustrating, because you go to a networking event and you leave and you go, I didn't get anything out of that, because what you wanted to get out of it was a new client or someone that is committed to meet with you or do something like that. And I think in some cases that can happen, but for instance, for financial advisors, that's very rarely going to happen. And so they walk out of these events feeling disappointed. But what if they had someone who they would talk to who became their advocate, who maybe is not going to become their client, but somebody who knows a lot of other people and can spread the word about how great you are? It's finding those connectors in those groups that can become enormously valuable, as opposed to finding one person who you think may want to do business with you. It's more about, hey, how can I help you? And then how can you help me? And it's not, do you want to do business with me today? And I think the other thing is, like, for instance, with financial advisors, they walk into a networking event and somebody says, what do you do? And they say, I'm a financial advisor. Literally no one wants to talk to them anymore. And so you're there to attract people to you, but by the power of your own words, you're repelling people from you. I mean, it's a messaging problem. And so if you think you're going to walk in and find people who want to do business with you, you'd be lucky to get them to want to talk to you for very long based on their initial impression, which is not the right impression, but it just happens to be that's the impression of financial advisors. And so we have to work to change that impression by not selling them something, by not wanting to meet next week to talk about their business or whatever it is. Just finding relationships that we can cultivate that will turn into maybe them referring us to 10 other people, as opposed to, just trying to get that one meeting.
And then in particular, wholesalers will go to these broker-dealer conferences. So now you have 300, sometimes 2,000 financial advisors walking around, and then you have this murderer's row of wholesaler booths and tables. Yeah. It's kind of like a gauntlet that these financial advisors run through, and it's hilarious. The things that they put out there to attract the financial advisor, just so that they can pause long enough so that this, rabid salesperson, wholesaler, can jump on them and, pin them down and get a meeting, or ask them, why aren't you using my company's product? It's absolutely mind-numbing, in my opinion, but it's the standard of how do you.
I don't think it's a very good strategy at all. I've often thought that it's useless, because the people that are there at those booths are often not the same wholesaler that's going to be in that person's territory. And so then they're compiling a list, and it gets back to somebody who gets back to somebody else. It gets all cleaned up. And then finally it gets to the wholesaler like 2 months later and says, here's some people at LPL that we met at this conference. It's like, that's not, it's not necessarily very effective. I think the more effective way is to find calls to action, value added things that they might be interested in that you can then tie into later. Hey, we've got this special program on helping you develop your value proposition. We'd love to help you with that. Oh, sure, absolutely. Can you have the wholesaler come and meet with me? I mean, I'm just using that as an example, but something like that, you might actually say, yeah, have your local wholesaler come and meet with me right away. As opposed to, hey, we got this really great fund. It's right in the middle of all funds, and so it's going to be great, But finding a different way to get that local wholesaler into the office, that's the key. And I get the overall exposure and things like that. But I think that, and I'm a little skewed on this, but I do think hiring outside speakers and having those speaking events where people will come to the event for whatever the speaker's speaking about, and then there's a call to action that the wholesaler can then deliver in the field, I think that's the best way to do it. Handing out, I've seen people pull suitcases through those halls where they're filling their suitcase up with little stuffed animals and water bottles and flashlights, and they don't care what the product is in terms of the mutual fund or whatever it is. It's just, I just don't think it's a good use of time. But the broker dealers require it, and they want you to do it, and they want you to pay to be there. And so there's kind of two ways to look at it, but there's got to be a different call to action where people in the field can then get connected with those advisors.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we're going to talk about your steps to building the description of your value in a second. But before we move on, though, you use the word connectors a lot. And connectors to me sounds like marketing, like you're connecting people together that have potential. But can you reference, or can you give me your thoughts on the difference between a connector and a closer? because at the end of the day, you might have a big bunch of friends that you're all connected, in the business, but if you can't close the business, then there is no business.
Well, that's why I think that you connect through people that are really good advocates and they speak for you. Just gathering a bunch of people who are going to be your friends or whatever is not necessarily closing business. It's got to be all about at the end of the day, if you don't close any sales, who cares how many people you know if you're in sales? So it's not about that. It's about strategically using your relationships to make sure. It's not about, hey, I can connect you with this person and that person and this person and that person. I mean, that's great, but those kinds of connectors don't often do a lot of business. It's got to be strategic. A connector is somebody who is willing to help someone else, who has the personality or characteristics that somebody else would want to share with someone that they know. So it's not just I'm connecting you or you're connecting me. It's developing this web, but it's not necessarily because you're going to be someone who's going to connect you to my friend here and my friend here and my friend over there, because that's a lot of work and you're not closing any sales. So it's got to be strategic. And I like the idea that other people do the connecting for you. Other people say, I've got somebody that you need to meet. And there's because of the value that you bring to the table, because of something that you're putting out there. So it's got to be, in a lot of cases, different than what you might think it is.
Yeah, I agree. In fact, before we hit the record button, I mentioned that I'm going to connect you with a couple of ladies that I think that you'll have a great chance of doing some business with both ways, frankly.
Yeah.
How does your social IQ play into all of this connecting and closing?
Yeah. So there's a social IQ that is just that you know people that you see them at a networking event or something and they talk and talk and talk and talk and talk and you can't get away from them and you're giving them all sorts of signals, like you're giving them the gotta go kind of a thing. Yeah, but they don't recognize it because they don't have good social awareness. Now, sometimes you just love what you're talking about and you don't care if anybody is interested or not interested. You just want to talk about it. But I mean, for the most part, someone, if they have good social awareness, they will recognize, be able to read the audience, if you will. I can see that this person is not that interested, or that they don't understand what I'm talking about, or that they're skeptical. And I'm going to address those things because I can see it on their faces. It happens from the stage when you're speaking. I've seen speakers get up there and there's just deadpan in the audience and they don't do anything about it. You've got to if you see that your audience is disengaged, whether it's one person or 500 people, you've got to change something, do something to get them engaged again. And sometimes it's impossible, but at least we have to try. And that's what happens with people with low social IQs, is they're not really paying attention to the other signals that they're getting from other people.
Any tips on how to increase your social IQ easily, or maybe for someone who's never heard that concept before?
Well, there's just an easy litmus test, and that is in any conversation, whether it's a conversation with a prospective client or a friend or whatever, look back at that conversation and see, did you speak more than 50% of the conversation time, or did you listen more than 50% of the conversation time? And social IQ almost always is ranked by listening. Because you can ask a good question and still be in control of the conversation and not say much at all. And that is also social IQ, because you're aware that they would rather talk and nobody asks them about these things perhaps, and you're doing that and it's setting you up in a different way. And it's all you need to do is be engaged in what they're talking about, as opposed to coming up with your own perfect words and talking all about yourself. They're much more interested in themselves. And so it's those kinds of things. But that 50%, did I talk more than 50% or listen more than 50%? And you can just go back and judge how you're doing and then think about that the next time you're going into a conversation.
Yeah, it's very wise. I forget who said it, but two people were interviewing for a position, and they asked the gal that was doing the hiring or doing the selecting afterwards why she chose the one over the other. And she said, well, person A, after speaking with them, I thought that they were, a very interesting person. Person B, after talking with them, I felt like I was a very interesting person because they were listening. So that's kind of what you're talking about there. Now, let's
Yeah.
just shift gears. You mentioned about, that that we often don't, you don't message yourself properly. Not you personally, but people don't message themselves properly. So
Yeah.
you come up with 4 steps to build a description of your value. First one is to focus your message on a target market, to pick your target. I don't know if your opinion has changed on that or your position has changed on that, but can you explain that a little bit and to kind of even foreshadow more? I've been hearing different sides of the camp. One side of the camp says to be a specialist, be a niche market practitioner. The other one says be a generalist and just have better stuff. Which one do you subscribe to?
I'm sort of in the middle actually, because I think if I look at the most successful financial services practices that we work with, they almost always have a pocket of niches, which means that they work with a lot of executives, but they also work with a lot of physicians, and they also work with a lot of business owners. And so it's not that they specialize only in working with business owners, but my gosh, when you're talking to a business owner, you can't say we work with executives and physicians and business owners, because they don't care about any of those other things besides the one thing that they happen to be. And so I think most organizations have several niches. And I think it's important to message yourself properly to that niche when you're speaking to them. So if you're I'll give you an example. If you're at a business function and you know there's business owners there, instead of saying, we work with lots of, everybody, individuals, families, and businesses, you say, well, we work with a lot of business owners. In fact, and this is an example of one financial advisor and what he says, in fact, we currently to date, we've worked with about 60 business owners and helped them sell their business and move on to the next stage of their career. Now you've got their attention because there's only a few things that business owners are interested in. It's revenue now and selling their business at some point in the future. And you've now capped like, oh, how do you do that? Or what do you do? Oh, I thought I am a financial advisor, but we work with a lot of business owners and help them move through this process of successfully selling their business. And so now that they're more interested in you, but if you say we work with physicians and executives and everybody, it's just not interesting to the person you're talking to. So I think the idea is whether you've got one niche or 50 niches, whomever you're speaking to, you need to have a message for them. And so you can do that easily verbally. You ask them first what they do, and then you can make that correlation and tie in, oh, we actually work with some teachers just like you. But the other part of it is on your website, you can be specific about how you're targeting certain groups of people. Now, if you're a wholesaler, it's kind of the same thing. If you're walking into a super top producer's office and that person wants to know, are other people that are doing business like me using your product? I mean, are there people at my high echelon that are using the product? And yeah, and people at different levels are also using it, but it's making it feel right for them at that moment. It's just like a financial advisor making their services feel right for that particular prospect at that moment. Saying you work for everybody sounds really cool, but it's ineffective.
Yeah, I agree. Ultimately, they're all the 6 key planner tasks that a financial advisor does, maybe heavy in one or another. I often teach that it's more important to focus on who you do those tasks for as opposed to just what you're doing.
Exactly. I talk about that too.
Yeah. Now, I've also been taught that you can ebb and flow between niche and generalist. You go into a new market and you develop that market as a niche, and as it works there, the techniques and the strategies, then you can apply them to multiple niches, which turns you into a generalist. Is that what you're saying by kind of being in the middle?
It can be that. So for instance, we have several clients who have an overall planning process, the blank planning process, we'll call it, but they have a special blank planning process for physicians and a blank planning process for executives and a blank planning process. So they have this overall umbrella over all that they do, and their process is sort of the same, but they want people to know, hey, listen, we work with people just like you. We understand your situations. We understand what you're going through is going to be different than what somebody else does. And we have a process. We've modified our process to meet your needs. And so that's one of the things that we do. Actually, when we write website content for a lot of advisors, we take that main concept and we split it into the specific niches. So I want to know if you've ever worked with an entrepreneur. I'm going to click on that and see what you've done for entrepreneurs. Wow, this sounds like something that would be good for me.
That's interesting. Now, I can see that being different than being a generalist. Like you go from being a generalist to this specialist. You're going to know this plan, or you're going to know about business transitions, selling a business and such. But when does it become necessary to become a celebrity to that market to win? And this is why I asked that. If I could just ask you a little bit follow on. If someone sat down and they said that they do financial planning for millennials, and they can even like really focus in on what kind of millennial. But if they're sitting across from Susie Orman, who wrote the book Fabulous and Broke, that's targeting our youth and the savings, who's going to get the business most of the time? It's going to be the celebrity usually. And it's not just with financial services, but any industry. Dr. Phil has one of the leading weight loss books. I mean, the guy's as big as a barn. It's because of his celebrity that's out there. I love you, Dr. Phil.
Right.
But so how do you deal with that? And when does that become something that you need to do to get to the next level?
See, I think that, unless you have an unbelievably unique concept and a unique platform. So, you've got PBS as your platform, or you've got your own TV show, or you write some major blockbuster book, you're never going to become a celebrity. And so shooting for that and thinking that that's who you are is, I think, less effective than being who you actually are and just working towards getting that business in your area with people that are going to refer business to you. And you're not really competing with these celebrities or even their ideas. You've got your own, and those celebrities aren't going to work one-on-one with somebody, but you can. And so I think it's this idea that we're going to become celebrities is so far-fetched. It's like, I want to be a movie star, and I'm going to go to LA and be a movie star. And that's great, but probably 99% of the people don't ever reach where they aspire to. That they're going out there and they're waiting tables now, and we never got that break. So I think you just do your good work. And if a break happens, it happens. But I don't think we turn ourselves into celebrities. I think celebrity happens to us based on the things that we've done and the platforms that we have.
Very well said. So when does it become the focus? Which focus needs to be first? I'm kind of stammering, but ideally is that I've heard create the minimum viable product and then use the best marketing to get that product out there in front of your marketplace. And I've also heard recently that the best marketing is to have the better product and to not work so much on all of the superficial marketing, but to really spend time in creating the best wheel or the best mousetrap. What's your opinion from the schoolhouse and from the field about content versus content marketing?
Yeah, I mean, I think you want to have the best product. It's unethical marketing to promote the heck out of something that isn't any good. Because you're kind of telling a lie to people. We have this great process when you really don't have a process at all. I think that you want to build the best product, and then you want to sell it with the most integrity, meaning having good marketing that's going to talk about the benefits of that particular product. And I think that having really great marketing for a really bad product, like pet rock or something, is not, it's just, it's good, it's fun, but I don't think that's a good core concept.
My poor pet rock. You mentioned that the number one way to bring in new business is through referrals.
Yeah.
Well, referral marketing is much different than what I would call cold marketing. So how do you bridge that gap to get to that referral, call it oasis, where you're just getting referral marketing?
Yeah, I mean, people think that they get referrals by accident, and so we have to do all these other things because referrals are only going to come whenever someone runs into somebody and might have an opportunity to talk about us. But actually, you can quantify your referrals, and if you've got, like, the first client that I worked with, you had mentioned that in the introduction, he went from 10 million to 200 million in under 5 years. He had two clients that had worked at a particular company, just two. He hardly had any money under management. And we asked those two clients to help us. We're going to put on a a seminar on how to retire from this company without making big mistakes. And would you be willing to pass this along to other people that you know are getting ready to retire from this company? And that was the marketing strategy. And that marketing strategy turned into over $100 million because we used so we had 2 people, and then we had 4, and then we had 6, and we kept asking them the same questions. We're not asking, do you know anyone who may want to do business with us? But do you know somebody who may want to come to this educational event that's going to help them, whether they do business with us or not, on the strategies you need to know? What do you need to know about benefits? What do you need to know about taking money out of your accounts when you get in retirement? What do you need to know about these things? And we're going to do this seminar. And there was no food served. Well, there was Chex Mix, but there was no like big, steak dinner or whatever. It was just a good educational content presentation. But we asked people to help us. And the first event, no one showed up. And we thought we've got a failure here. And the second event, we did it again. 8 people showed up. And then we got more people to come. And then we got more people to come. And then we did it weekly. And it's just one of those things that it's not about the same way of thinking about referrals. I think that people, I'm going to ask you for referrals and you're going to give me some, right? Well, no, I feel uncomfortable when you ask me for referrals. But if I ask, to send somebody to my free whatever it is, or to take a look at my book or do whatever, it's more value based. And I think that's easier. But you only need 1 or 2 clients to start getting referrals. You don't need a million clients who love you to start getting referrals. It's finding the catch that will get them to talk about you.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome stuff. I think that a lot of people are naive when they think about asking for referrals. I've went through the training. You might have seen the training somewhere where you're supposed to write down everyone you know, and it's a thought jogger, but there's no connectivity like you just mentioned. There's no value to bring to that person and to their referral. It's almost playing on guilt. It's almost saying, well, I tricked you into hiring me. Don't you know somebody else that's equally as naive?
Right.
I like the idea. And I like the idea that you mentioned about driving them to something valuable.
Yeah.
Not necessarily making a direct, Donnie Brasco, you got to vouch for this guy. No, it's like, hey, come to this thing that I found valuable. You might find it valuable. And I really appreciate that, that clear distinction in referrals. You also mentioned that, this mistake in marketing, not messaging yourself, is about asking or not asking, but we want to talk about asking the right questions.
Yeah.
And that's how you're going to be able to develop your message and develop that relationship. Which are your favorite questions to ask, and maybe why?
Well, I think one of the things you if you're talking to somebody, you ask them, what do you do? Where do you work? But then the next question is, well, how did you get into that? Or why do you like that? You're asking them more the why questions, the Simon Sinek why. Why do you do that? What drove you to do that? Why is that important to you? Kind of questions, because they're probably not getting asked those kind of questions. And it's totally in line with what you ask them. Hey, where do you work? I work at this company. Well, what do you like about it? Like, how did you get there? Did you go to school for that? And then just, asking them more, I call them, the curious questions. So it's just because you want to know, and it's not contrived, and it's just, I want to know more about you. So tell me why you do that. I'm interested to find out why people get in certain positions and why you stay in jobs for 30 years, and just tell me more about you, that kind of a thing. I don't think that there's any specific one question, but I think it's just those curious kinds of questions that people usually don't get, because people mostly don't care enough to ask. How you doing? Good. That's it. I'm not asking any more questions. But it's really finding out more about what's important to them, because that will lead to all sorts of different things that you don't even know where it might go.
That's very true. Very true. In fact, I'm intrigued about RedZone marketing. We talked about it in the past, using the football analogy of getting into the end zone and scoring with your marketing and such. And you are a football fan, and you got that from grandma. And, we know your history there is very, it's an awesome history. But there's a couple of things too, like your brand, like you're wearing a red top there, you wear the red lipstick. Your brand is referable. It's professional. It's kind of cool. And I think that someone could do the same thing as you're mentioning, is to ask those questions about why did you choose red zone marketing, and all those detailed kind of questions. Um, One layer deeper, maybe even a couple of layers deeper, are the words that we use.
Yeah.
So are there any words that you find that could repel someone when you're asking questions like this, or that even could compel them to tell you more? Are there any of your favorite words to use or to not use when you're talking with prospect?
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of times when you're talking to a prospect, it's all about what are we going to say next, and how am I going to present what I do? And I think that that's, especially in a first meeting, it's got to be more about them, as long as they don't feel that it's a contrived situation. Like, is he just trying to like get me to talk about these things because he's going to use it against me later or something? But I think that it has to be just really good, honest and authentic ways of having a conversation. And I think that open-ended questions are always better. So you're letting them kind of talk through things. But the more that you let them talk, the better you will be. And it doesn't seem like that would be logical, but I always say the more you talk, the less people like you. And that's kind of true. It was like that example of that interview that you were talking about. Why did you hire this person opposed to that person? Well, this person made me feel like I was important, and they were the one that was interviewing them. But it's the way we feel about it. We like people more if they're more about what's important to us. And so it's always digging into that and being interested in the things that are very interesting to them, as opposed to being ready to talk about yourself.
Doesn't that almost sound selfish? Like people are really more interested in themselves. It's reality.
Yeah.
You think that's, and do you think that's kind of like hereditary? Is that part of our evolution of self-preservation by wanting to talk about ourselves and promote ourselves?
I mean, I think that it might be that, but I mean, I think we were built as human beings to think about ourselves. Um, I'm, I can't feel your pain. I can feel my pain. So I'm thinking about my pain. I'm thinking about the things that are going on in my life. That's what's inside of my head. But being able to get somebody out of that and to be more caring and have more concern for the other person is, I don't know that I mean, it could be hereditary. But I have a daughter and a son, and my daughter is incredible at that. And my son, well, maybe not so much, not so much at all. And I don't think it's hereditary. I think it's just where your focus is. My daughter's always concerned about how everybody else is doing. My son's more concerned about how he's doing.
And maybe hereditary wasn't the right word. Maybe genetic or um,
Sort of built
biological.
into the cake mix. Yeah, I mean, I think that might be right. It's sort of how we are as people. You're a more caring person, but you can learn these things, because simply by not talking and just listening, you can become this other, more of a social IQ connector kind of a person, not by talking, but by listening. And anyone can do it. You can be very type A personality and very focused and very purposeful and let's get something done and let's just talk about this. But at the same time, you can still stop and you can still listen to what the other person has to say and honestly learn something and be interested in that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And if you look at your example about your kids, um, like your daughter, female, designed to nurture, designed to preserve. That's probably why she's a little bit more curious. The son, not designed to do that, designed to go out and hunt and gather and fight.
Play hockey. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I said: hunt, gather, fight, hockey. And truly, but that's what I mean. That's like almost genetic programming, right? And then let's go further. You've seen it, and it's out there, and I don't know why it works, but it works. But there's plenty of posts with guys in their hot rods. Oh, I'm here in my garage with my Lamborghini I just bought, and I can teach you how to do this in 45 seconds too. Right? Well, it's amazing how many guys are tuned into that. Guys want that. It's almost like there's a marketing DNA that you can just plug into and put it up there. Another one are for the gals. You see a lot of gals out there, and some do it very professionally and tastefully, and other ones not so much. that they're trying to be a, just say a booth babe, right? To get that initial attention from the audience. What do you think about that? Is that something that's, I mean, is that nonsense? Is it something that's being taught to go into that genetic layer of humanity?
I mean, it might be. I think the reason people do that is because it continues to work. It's attracting a portion of the population on either side, and I think that it's a sales tactic. There's always going to be really great salespeople out there, and really great salespeople are going to be able to sell you something, sell the right person something at the right time. But I think a better strategy is to be authentic. And if you are somebody who loves Lamborghinis and owns one, and you've got a reason for talking about that seems to make sense because it's not just self-promotional. But in that case, they're proving that, hey, I've made a lot of money and I can show you how to do it too. But it doesn't feel right to me because it's not authentic, and it's not based on the actual concept. Because, by the way, they never tell you how they got that Lamborghini exactly. They say, I just did these 3 things and I sat in my underwear at home and got this stuff done. It's like, really? And they sell people because people are desperate for those kinds of things. But at the same time, they're not giving the secrets away because they really probably don't work as well as they might have said that they do. I'd rather learn something that's authentic and learn something that someone has done that I've seen the results and I've seen how they've done it, and I could do it because it feels like something that I could do, not something that is outrageous.
Well, we know that your Lamborghini is bright red, like your your brand is.
Right.
But it's very interesting, and I've been on teams where the sales mantra was, okay, we need to find a new audience that hasn't heard of our company before, because the product that the company had sold previously was just a disaster.
Yeah.
That's tough to market. That's really, if you have any kind of integrity, that's a tough one to do. On the other hand, there are teams that focus so much on the content that they don't get the word out. So if you have the best thing in the world, but you don't have a strong enough marketing and sales team, you're in equally a difficult situation. You mentioned value propositions, and you say that as they are typically created, they usually don't work. And then you say, because they don't convey anything memorable or usable when you use them. Mostly they equate to you speaking to yourself about yourself. And that's the problem. It's not about what the other person actually cares about.
Right.
So with that, Maribeth, what are some of the most impactful value propositions that you've seen out there, or that you may be able to share with our wholesalers and financial advisors?
Yeah, so there's lots of great value propositions. There's many more that are really not very great. But a value proposition needs to have a couple of key concepts in there. They have to be targeted to the people you're talking to. So just a general value proposition, I'm a really great whatever it is not interesting. Or I've written a lot of great books. Who cares? I mean, honestly, what is it going to do for me? So for instance, if I meet somebody who's a financial advisor and they say, what do you do? I say, well, my company is RedZone Marketing. We focus on helping advisors, typically who gross more than $1 million, get to their next level in sales. That's it. So they might, if they're just started in business, they might not be interested. Well, I'm not at that level. I don't do that. But it's exactly what we do, and we help them really do it. We have tangible results in getting people that are over $1 million already in gross to get to their next level. That's what it is. So it can't be about, hey, I'm really good at my job, or I've been in this business for 20 years and that makes me really good. And it doesn't. It makes you old. So what are you going to say that's actually going to be something that might be interesting or beneficial to the other person? It's got to have that key, that benefit for the other person. So, I mean, I have that example of the advisor who says, we work with business owners. In fact, to date, we've helped about 60 business owners successfully sell their business and move on to the next stage of their career. Well, that's a value proposition for a business owner from a financial advisor. It's not a standard across the board vanilla value proposition. It's a value proposition for a business owner. If you're talking to somebody else, you're not going to use that. But that's where a true value proposition comes in. It's got to be interesting to the other person because it's impactful for them. How's it going to be impactful? You got to tell them something that they might be interested in.
Yeah, I'm hearing this theme of authenticity over and over again, and really being genuine in your approach, and that's what's going to really win the day from you, no matter which market you're talking to. Um, you mentioned as well that in a lot of businesses today, we are marketing what people need. You need asset allocation. You need diversification. You need lower prices. When actually what people want is what's going to drive them to buy. So what are you seeing out there that people, financial advisors, wholesalers, their clients, what do they actually want?
Yeah. Well, I know what an individual consumer wants, and what a consumer wants is not a financial plan or asset allocation or any of those things that we're talking about. They don't want those things. They need them. What they want is somebody who's going to be on their side and walk them through these things and be their advocate and help them figure out all of these things in their life and not be judgmental. And so you think, well, is that me? Yep, that's me. But nobody knows that because you're talking about things that they don't actually want, that they need. And the reason that a lot of financial advisors get business only when someone has money in motion is because it's the only time they're thinking about them. They're not, well, boy, I really need and want to talk to the financial advisor right now because my husband just passed away and I need to get in there and talk to somebody. Okay, well, that's an immediate need. Most of the times we don't have an immediate need, and we don't have any kind of a want, any kind of a speculation that this person might be actually able to deliver what I want. They don't even really know what they want. They probably haven't thought about it for a very long time. And for a financial advisor who's working with a wholesaler, what does a financial advisor want? A financial advisor does not want their time to be wasted by somebody coming in and saying, so tell me about your business. And that happens all the time. Or a lot of the top advisors that we work with, they have specific rules in place for when they will never meet with a wholesaler because they've been burnt by so many wholesalers coming in and doing stuff that just doesn't work. And so what they really want is someone that's going to help them either with a good product that's going to help their clients, with a concept that they didn't know about, with something value added that's going to help them build their business. They want to know something that wholesalers have such an enormous amount of information that could be useful to a financial advisor because you see many, many financial advisors. What's working, what's not working. Hey, listen, I know these things that are working and not working because I'm a wholesaler and I work, whatever it is, but giving them what they actually want. I want to know what this big firm down the road is doing because they seem to be getting all this new business. Well, the wholesaler probably knows what that person's doing and, can share the information that is really of interest to the actual financial advisor as opposed to tell me more about your business. We know it's a contrived way of asking the question so that they can figure out what kind of types of business they do and they can figure out how their product's going to fit in as opposed to being honestly concerned about their business.
I would say it's sophomoric. You being a professor can appreciate that word, right?
Right.
Yeah, but it actually is what's being taught out there by many firms is to go in and try to get them. And it's a trap. I mean, everyone knows that you feel like you're a trap. I'm telling you things and all of a sudden, oh, well, that's awesome because our product is exactly what you're looking for,
Right.
It's like that paper cutout. Oh, great. How many would you like? 500. Great. Like the commercial. I forget what commercial was for, but basically, no matter what the financial advisor said, the wholesaler said, great, 500. Hey, that's a great amount of content that you've just given us about where you are at the universities as well as in RedZone marketing. So grateful for that. Appreciate it very much. A couple of forward-looking questions for you, please. First one is, are you writing another book? When's the next book coming?
I am not. My publisher has asked me to write another book, and I am so far decided not to do it. Writing a book is actually not the hard part. Promoting the book is the exhausting part. And so I've got to find I've just got to find the right time where I can really do the right job of promoting the book.
Well, if I remember back, some of my professors at college, they wrote a book and then they made me buy that book for their class.
Right.
You're not doing that?
that is a strategy that I'm not doing. But I mean, it's one way of moving books, but it's not, yeah. And I wouldn't write an academic book. I wouldn't write a textbook. I would write another business book. So, but it requires just being out there and doing the press and speaking. And I love doing the speaking. I'm doing that anyways, but it's really focused on moving that book. And that's what the publisher wants. And that's what, if you're going to write it, you might as well have some people read it. So anyways, long story short, I'm not writing one right now, but I might.
I think we just did. No, well, what does the future look like for Maribeth, and even for RedZone marketing? What does 5 years look like for you? What does 10 years look like for you? I know you have kids that are threatening to become adults. Are you going to have any kind of a geographic change? Are you going to move to sunny weather? What's going on in the next 5-10 years for Maribeth and RedZone?
Yeah, I really don't know. My husband and I have been talking about moving, but I travel all the time, so I'm always someplace else. So I never get bored in Chicago because I'm always someplace else. But we may decide to get out of Chicago, not because of the weather, but the tax situation is horrific in Illinois, so we might want to get out. Who knows? But as for business, I mean, I think the industry is going to be changing a lot over the next 5 to 10 years, and so I can't really tell you where I'm going to end up with all the changes. But I do a lot of speaking for mutual fund companies bring me in, and I speak at conferences on their behalf, and they sponsor me and all that kind of stuff. And if there's a lot more changes in the industry, that may end up going away. Who knows? I may be traveling a lot less if they who knows what's going to happen with the way that the industry is changing. So I can't really tell what I'm going to be doing in the next 5 to 10 years, but I love what I'm doing right now. And if it continued this exact way, I'd be happy. But we're always watching for what the changes are and what modifications we need to make to be able to be ready for what the market really needs. And as a marketing person, social media didn't exist a few years ago. Who knows what will exist a few years from now that we never even anticipated.
Holograms. Mark my words. Holograms.
Okay.
Yeah, remember Darth Vader or Princess Leia back in the Star Wars? They did a hologram. We could just hit the wholesaler hologram. Boom, there she is, and she tells us about the product and the value add and such.
Yeah.
We'll see what happens. I'd like to kind of close out by asking a couple of my signature questions, and appreciate your input on this one. But the first one is this. I asked these to all the guests, Maribeth, so you may recall. The first one, though, is if you could pick the phone up, and on the other end of the line, there was a 25-year-old Maribeth Kuzmeski that answered the phone, what would you tell your younger self? What advice would you give yourself?
I don't know if I can actually say this in public. Here's, I got married right after I got married at 27. By 28, I was pregnant, and I would say, do it differently. I would have waited a few more years. We didn't plan it that way, but it was in the middle of when my career was taking off, and I was I was just got married. We had all these plans, and then everything got kind of changed and altered. Now I love my kids. I love them so much. And they're both, one is out of college and one is in college. But I would have changed that a little bit. But I never look back and say, boy, I wish I never did that, because I think that there's lots of learning experiences that, like the first time I bombed in a presentation, which was one of the first times I ever spoke. And if I didn't learn from that, I'd never be speaking today. If everything was good, but it wasn't that good, I might just be an average kind of speaker out there today. But I've had my ups and downs, and I always learn from the downs, and you hate them and you hate going through them. But it's just the kind of the way that it goes. But I think I would have changed my personal stuff a little bit and been married and enjoyed my husband without kids for a little bit longer.
I have to ask, what happened when you bombed one of your first what happened?
Yeah, so it was one of my very first presentations, and I came out there just charging strong, super aggressive, talking about the red zone and all this kind of stuff. And it was an audience full of men, and they thought, why is she talking about football? Like, what does she know about football? And at the very end of the presentation, I told a story about my grandmother, and that's why I'm involved in football, and my just my relationship with her and all of that. And a guy came up to me afterwards and he said, "We would have liked you a lot better if you told that grandma story in the beginning." And I thought, wow. Now, you don't like to hear that, but guess when I always tell my grandma story now? It's in the very beginning, because I don't want people to think that I'm a know-it-all football fan. I'm not. I just happened to be raised by a grandmother who loved football, and I loved her, and I named my company after her. And so telling that and then getting into the philosophy of Red Zone is a lot better than just saying, well, she's a big football fan. What does she know about football? She never played football. And it started off too aggressive. And so I just had to change my strategy, and I saw a speaking coach, and I still see my speaking coach 3 times a year. So that's just how it goes.
Well, congratulations on that recovery. I would offer to you that that's not a very big bomb. That's like a little thing, but
Oh, it was pretty balmy. Yeah.
that's awesome. All right. Signature question number 2. If you could have any superpower, Maribeth, which one would you choose, and what would you do with it?
I think I would I would fly. I would want to fly. It would just be it would be so efficient to go on family vacations, just take my family on my back and just go places and not have to be in traffic in LA and in New York and Chicago and all of that. But yeah, I would love to be able to fly and use my flying to help other people, because of course they wouldn't be able to fly. Only I could fly. So I would help other people by being able to fly.
Well, that's amazing. I think that that's going to happen actually here in the next few years with Jeff Bezos' idea about everyone having a personal drone to drop their packages off. I think that could happen. But
Yep.
I agree with you that there is something about the time that we spend in transit, and if you could fly, you could do some terrific things for it, for your family. And you mentioned vacation and all that too. It's kind of cool. You didn't really go right to the business. Like, you get more business. You're like, want to take your family on vacation with you. That's nice. Hey, Maribeth, I want to take a moment and just kind of tell you thanks. You have inspired not only a bunch of people out there, but also me. So I really appreciate, you and the work that you do and the courage that you display by putting it out there. I mean, you're using football, you're using all of these techniques and marketing ideas that are not always going to be everyone's favorite. So I applaud your courage in doing that. You're also investing in the next generation. A lot of people, I talk about giving back and teaching the younger generation. You're actually doing it. So thanks for being a leader in that and doing that. I'm sure that if anyone wants to connect with you, they know how to do it. But RedZone Marketing, they can Google that. They can also connect with you on LinkedIn. And if they have a firm, if they're a wholesaler at a firm that wants to bring you in, you are available to come in and do keynote presentations. I would assume that you would also do some training and marketing if a broker-dealer wanted to bring you in as well.
Yep.
So if you're full service and very experienced, I thank you, though, for doing that personally. You're encouraging to people like me in addition to the marketplace. So thanks for that. I guess the last thing we can wrap up with, though, is to wish you well on your fortune and fame parade of life. And hopefully things go well. I got to ask you, though, Columbia or Oklahoma State? Who do you cheer for, like during sporting events or political rallies? It's kind of a diversity, isn't it?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've got so many universities too. So I went to Syracuse, I went to George Washington, I went to Oklahoma State, I teach at Oklahoma State, teach at Columbia. But sports are not super great right now at Oklahoma State, but I do like to go to the games whenever I can. And Columbia doesn't have really like that many good sports. So
They have
yeah,
a good chess team, don't they? Isn't the chess team in Columbia pretty good?
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are. I don't know.
I don't know.
But yeah, I mean, I still follow, like, Syracuse basketball is my favorite. I just wish they were doing better this year, but yeah.
Yeah, they're a staple, though. They're a pillar in college basketball. Just a couple of years they haven't been a top team, but well, great. Well, we'll wrap with that then, Maribeth. Thanks again for coming on the show, and appreciate you, and look forward to seeing you again soon. As we say on the Awesome Wholesaler Experience, it's about the journey and I do wish you well on yours. Wholesalers, thanks for listening. And if you'd like to support this show, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And if you'd like to leave a comment, you can definitely do that. I do read them each individually, and we'll respond to them. If you'd like to do like Jeffrey Gittimer said, though, and tell both of your friends, you can do that too. But seriously, if you do enjoy the show, I appreciate the feedback and the support. Thanks, everyone, for listening and for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the show. And, of course, thanks for being awesome. Goodbye, everybody.